The sun had not yet completely broken through the sky in Sao Paulo when Gabriel Rangel was already up. On the 20th floor of his luxurious building in the gardens, he watched the city below, his arms crossed and his expression stern. The light flooded the silent apartment, illuminating impeccably designed furniture, contemporary works of art, and a kitchen equipped with the latest appliances. But everything there seemed more like a showroom than a home. Gabriel's life was punctuated by meetings, numbers, quick decisions, and bold goals. He had inherited his father's technology company at the age of 28 after a sudden heart attack that changed his life, or at least its course. In less than a decade, he multiplied the company's value, invested in promising startups, and became one of the most respected entrepreneurs in the country. But despite his fame and growing wealth, something in him remained untouched: the absence of human warmth. Gabriel had no wife, no children, no close friends. His relationships were short-lived. The conversations he had outside of work were functional and brief. The mansion where he lived, with a heated pool, squash court, and 3 cars in the garage, was too quiet. He said he liked peace and quiet, but in reality it was emptiness that consumed him inside without him realizing it. The only person who crossed his path daily, without being part of the corporate world, was Rosa, quiet, careful, always discreet. She cleaned, cooked, and organized the house as if she weren't there. Gabriel barely noticed her presence. Sometimes he would murmur a good morning, almost out of habit, before leaving for another 12-hour workday. That morning, Rosa entered the main room with soft steps, arranging the sofa cushions and picking up a cup that Gabriel had left on the sideboard the night before. He had already left for work, as usual, without showing any sign that something was bothering him. But something was bothering him. In recent days, Gabriel had been feeling a kind of discomfort he couldn't name, a strange emptiness, a more evident disconnect from everything around him. The company's numbers continued to rise, profits breaking records. Even so, he woke up with an inexplicable feeling of incompleteness, as if he had forgotten something important somewhere along the way. At the company, everything followed the usual pattern: meetings with investors, strategic decisions, spreadsheets, metrics. When one of his partners jokingly commented that he needed a vacation or a dog, Gabriel just smiled awkwardly. The idea of interrupting his routine was uncomfortable, and a dog meant emotional responsibility, something he skillfully avoided. But that day, when he returned home shortly after 9 p.m., something different happened. Before I tell you about this decisive moment that would change Gabriel's life forever, take advantage and subscribe to the channel. The story is just beginning, and you won't want to miss what comes next. The electronic gate opened slowly, revealing the modern and cold facade of the mansion. Gabriel parked, crossed the silent garden, typed his password on the door, and entered. He didn't call Rosa, didn't ask for dinner, just threw himself on the couch and lay there motionless, staring at the dark ceiling of the room. The sound of the clock was the only constant noise. It was then that, for the first time, he decided to get up in the middle of the night to drink some water. He walked through the kitchen without turning on the light, and that's when he heard a slight noise, like cutlery hitting a plate, a sound that shouldn't have been there. He stopped, his eyes adjusting to the darkness, and what he saw made him freeze. Rosa was kneeling in front of the sink, eating leftover food alone, in the dark. Gabriel couldn't say anything, and that's how it all began. Silence hung heavily over the mansion, as if it had swallowed the sound along with time. Gabriel remained there, standing at the kitchen entrance, watching Rosa hurriedly swallow the cold leftovers straight from a plate on the sink. The refrigerator was ajar, casting a soft blue light that outlined the woman's thin figure against the light marble of the room. For a moment, he thought about backing away, pretending he hadn't seen anything, but his feet wouldn't obey him. Rosa, noticing his presence, froze. The fork trembled in her hand. She stood up abruptly, her eyes wide, her shoulders hunched in shame. "Dr. Gabriel, I'm sorry," she muttered, stammering, looking at the floor. "I was just going to throw it away. I have a headache and forgot to eat dinner." He said nothing, just shook his head slightly, as if trying to understand the scene. And without saying a word, he turned and went back to the living room. He sat down on the sofa, resting his elbows on his knees and rubbing his face with his hands. A lump tightened his throat in a way he didn't understand, because it affected him so much. The next morning, the mansion followed its usual course, or at least tried to. Gabriel woke up later than usual. When he came downstairs, he found the breakfast table set as always. Fresh juices, artisan breads, fruit cut into perfect cubes, everything prepared with the same precision as every day, but he didn't touch anything. Rosa came out of the kitchen with her eyes downcast, wearing her discreet uniform and clean apron. She walked cautiously, as if her whole body apologized for having been seen the night before. "Good morning, Da Rosa." She stopped. It was rare for him to say her name. "What did you eat yesterday?" She hesitated. "It was what was left on your plate, sir. I didn't want to waste it. And before that, had you eaten anything?" Rosa lowered her eyes even further. "No, I had to leave early today. I woke up feeling a little dizzy. I didn't want to bother anyone." Gabriel didn't answer. He walked past her and left the house. As the car glided through the tree-lined streets of the gardens, he couldn't shake the image of Rosa kneeling in the kitchen. The kitchen, the most sophisticated space in the house, fully automated, with appliances designed to welcome chefs, but where no one ever cooked for him except her, the same woman who cleaned that floor every day with dedication, but who hid there at night to satisfy her hunger in silence. When he arrived at the office, his partners noticed his strange expression. Gabriel was quieter than usual. He didn't interrupt anyone, didn't complain about the presentation, didn't compulsively type on his cell phone. He just watched. On his way home, the discomfort remained, a deep uneasiness that he couldn't name. He entered the mansion with slow steps and everything there seemed dead. Despite the automatic lights on, the air conditioning at the ideal temperature, and the light scent of lavender in the air, the house seemed cold, soulless, without the smell of freshly brewed coffee, without the sound of the radio, without life. He looked around as if he were seeing that environment for the first time. The walls were covered with expensive paintings, but they meant nothing to him. The Italian sofa where he spent his nights watching endless TV series looked like a museum piece. In the kitchen, Rosa washed the dishes in silence. Gabriel took a deep breath and wondered how something so small could have become such a big wound inside him. That night, Gabriel couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in the bed, which was too big for one person, listening to the distant sound of cars on Nord de Gulho Avenue. The constant noise of the city, which had once been like a white noise track in his mind, now irritated him. His head felt heavy, his body restless, and above all, he felt a silent urgency that he couldn't explain. It was past 2 a.m. when he decided to get up. He walked silently down the dark hallway of the house, went down the stairs, and went to the kitchen. The light was off, but a faint glow escaped from under the door. He didn't announce his presence, slowly pushed the door open, and once again caught sight of the pink in the same place. She was crouching, her apron on her lap in front of the still warm oven, eating leftover lasagna directly from a small platter. This time she didn't even have time to hide. She turned around with a start, her eyes filled with fear. "Mr. Gabriel, I apologize again. I was going to throw it away, Rosa." He spoke softly, interrupting her. "Are you hungry?" She didn't answer right away. Her teary eyes looked at the floor. Her hands trembled on the crumpled dishcloth. Gabriel took a step forward. Rosa moved away a little, shrugging her shoulders. "I just thought it wouldn't be missed. It's just a little bit. And I don't like going out late at night hungry where I live. It's dangerous after a certain time." Her voice was thin, almost a whisper. Gabriel leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. This woman, whom he had considered for years to be just part of the household, now spoke as if asking permission to exist. And that caused him more discomfort than any million-dollar problem at the company. "Have you had dinner today?" he asked more firmly. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Just a coffee when I got home from the other house. I still work there in the morning. I didn't have time to eat properly, but it's okay, sir, don't worry. It's just today." "How many days a week do you eat dinner?" Silence answered. Gabriel felt a weight in his chest. That modern environment, with a full refrigerator, selected foods, dishes he never touched, and she there hidden, eating as if she were committing a crime. "Rosa, why didn't you ask me for food?" "Because it's not my role. I came here to work, doctor. It's already a lot that you let me sleep here, sometimes when I'm very tired. I don't want to take advantage." The word take advantage echoed in Gabriel's mind. She truly believed that eating was taking advantage. And perhaps, he thought, that was exactly what his attitude had always conveyed, that she was just a cog in the system, not someone with real needs. That's not right. Rosa took a step back. You don't have to change anything for me, doctor. Really, I can manage. I always have, but I never looked. He muttered more to himself than to her. Rosa didn't understand. She just lowered her head and went back to collecting the leftovers from the platter as if she wanted to erase what had happened. Good night, doctor. I apologize once again. She left the kitchen without looking at him. Gabriel stood there alone, staring at the platter with the few pieces of pasta still warm. For the first time, he tasted something, not in his mouth but in his stomach, a mixture of guilt and shame. He went back to his room but didn't sleep. And this time the noise he heard didn't come from the city, it came from within him. The next day dawned overcast with the sky of Sao Paulo tinged with gray. Gabriel woke up without needing the alarm. He had slept little, his head immersed in heavy thoughts. As he put on his dress shirt, something in his expression seemed different, less automatic, more opaque, as if a piece of his usual structure had broken. In the kitchen, the table was set with the same precision as always. Rosa, as usual, had already prepared everything before he even woke up. But when he saw her, Gabriel hesitated for a moment. She noticed but pretended not to. "Good morning, doctor," she said in her usual neutral tone, her eyes avoiding his. "Good morning, Rosa." He sat down at the table and stared at his plate for a few seconds before picking up his fork. The coffee was strong, the orange juice fresh, the bread still warm. He knew it was her who did everything, carefully, every day. And yet, she needed to hide to eat. "Did you have dinner last night?" he asked without looking up. She stopped wiping the counter and stood still. "Doctor, please, Rosa, just answer." "No," he said quietly, as if the word were a mistake. The silence between them lasted for several long seconds. Gabriel put down his cutlery. "You never asked me for anything. In all my years working here, I don't like to bother you, doctor. I'm already grateful to have this job. There are a lot of people who want a job like this. Yes, I know my place. And what place is that?" She took a deep, steady breath. "Whose servant? That's how it is. It always has been. I grew up hearing that those who work in other people's homes have to be invisible. Arrive early, leave late, don't cause trouble, don't make noise. That's what I know how to do." Gabriel stood up, slowly approaching the sink. His eyes met hers. For the first time, he didn't just see the employee. He saw a tired woman with deep lines on her face, hands marked by years of work, and eyes with a weight that wasn't just from fatigue, but from survival. "Invisible, Rose," he said with a faltering voice. "You're here every day. You cook, clean, organize everything, and I don't even know your full name." She smiled bitterly. "You don't need to know, doctor. My name doesn't change anything." "It changes for me," he replied almost in a whisper. She fell silent. An awkward silence hung between them. Gabriel moved away, running his hand through his hair, as if trying to reorganize his thoughts. "What I saw the day before yesterday bothered me more than anything I've ever faced at the company. I already told you it wasn't meant to be hurtful. I'm not angry, Rosa. I'm disappointed in myself." She finally looked him in the eye. A direct gaze without anger, but full of dignity. "You're not the only one. That's how the world is, Gabriel. We adapt. Those who have little learn to accept what's left over. But it shouldn't be that way. Should it? Maybe. But it is, and there are people who are much more in need than I am. I still have a place to sleep. I have my health. Some days I don't even feel hungry, just tired." Gabriel didn't know what to say. He felt a warmth rise in his chest, something between shame and helplessness. It was as if, for a moment, the mask of efficiency, control, and indifference he wore had fallen away, and behind it there was no answer. "If you'll excuse me, I'll finish cleaning the room." She turned to leave, but before she reached the door, he said, "Rosa, you're not invisible. At least not anymore." She stopped but didn't answer, just kept walking in silence. And for the first time in many years, Gabriel Rangel didn't feel in control of anything at all. Gabriel spent the next 2 days absorbed in his work. He worked mechanically, attended important meetings, but his mind was elsewhere. Every time he remembered Rosa's voice saying, "We adapt," he felt something break inside. That phrase resonated like a silent scream, a cruel portrait of the real world, which he had spent years ignoring, and now he could no longer do so. On Friday, he arrived home earlier than usual. Rosa was cleaning the living room bookcase when he entered. The sound of the cloth rubbing against the wood was the only sound in the room. "Rosa, can I ask you something?" he asked, taking off his jacket and throwing it on the sofa. She stopped and looked at him suspiciously. "Of course. Whatever you need. I want to take you home today." She frowned, not understanding. "Home? But I'll walk back alone, doctor. I always have." "You don't need to bother. It's no bother. I want to go. I want to see where you live." She hesitated. Her gaze became more defensive. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. It was outside the script she had learned to follow. "There's no reason, doctor. It's not a nice place, nor is it safe. The ride will drop me off nearby. It'll be quick." Rosa interrupted gently. "I just want to understand a little better who you are. I never cared about that before, and I'm trying to change." She remained silent. Her eyes searched for some truth in his face. Then she took a deep breath. "Okay, but only to the entrance of the street. I don't like showing my house to anyone." The drive to Capão Redondo was long, especially for someone used to the short trips between Itaim and Jardins. Gabriel drove his imported car with extra care. The streets changed in landscape, structure, and color, with broken sidewalks, graffiti-covered walls, and tangled wires on the poles. The world that unfolded there seemed distant from everything he knew, and yet it was part of the same city. Rosa didn't talk much, but every now and then she would make a comment. "This used to be a small field, now it's a parking lot. That bar over there, oh, that's where my oldest son worked for a while." Gabriel listened, he didn't interrupt. When they reached the entrance to a narrow alley, she asked him to stop. "Here, okay? I'll walk from here." He looked out the window. The street was dirt, with some houses made of exposed brick, others of wood, stacked on top of each other. Children ran barefoot, flying kites. An old man sold kebabs on a makeshift grill. Everything was movement, life, despite the precariousness. "Can I get out with you?" She hesitated. "No need. It's late. I don't want to attract attention. People here talk too much." Gabriel nodded respectfully. "All right. Just tell me, do you live here alone?" "I live with my 2 grandchildren. Their father, my son, died 5 years ago, and their mother disappeared. Since then, I've been there for them. They study nearby. They're good boys." "And you support the household alone?" "I have 2 other houses besides yours. I work Monday through Saturday. On Sundays, I do laundry and tidy up what I can. Some days my body begs for a break, but I can't stop." He was silent. Her reality unfolded with force. There was no victimhood in her words, only the truth. "Thank you for letting me come," he said sincerely. "You didn't have to, but thank you for wanting to." Before leaving, she turned around. "Dr. Gabriel, there are a lot of roses around here. The difference is that I was seen." And with that sentence, she disappeared down the alley, leaving Gabriel alone in the car, with the engine running and his chest strangely still. For the first time in a long time, he didn't want to go home. Gabriel spent the weekend differently, avoiding social engagements, turning off his cell phone, not opening his laptop. Something inside him demanded silence. Not the silence of a cold, clean house, but a silence in which to listen to what he had ignored for years. On Monday, he asked Rosa to come in later. He wanted to talk. When she entered the room, dressed as usual and walking quietly, he invited her to sit on the sofa. She was surprised, but accepted. "Rosa, I would like to understand your story better, if you want to tell me." She was silent for a few seconds. She looked at her fingers, which were clenching the apron cloth tightly. Then she exhaled slowly. "There's not much to understand, doctor. It's just a story, like so many others." "Even so, tell me." She raised her eyes, and there was something between pain and pride. "I was born in Minas, in a small town that barely appears on the map. I came to Sao Paulo when I was 16 with a bag of clothes and a letter of recommendation from my former employer. My first job here was in a house in Ipiranga. Then I went from house to house, always eating in the corner of the kitchen sink, always sleeping in the back room. That's what it's like to work in a rich person's house. You learn to be a shadow." Gabriel listened in silence. attentive to every word. I married a bricklayer, Mr. Julio. He was a good man, but his health was poor. He died young of stomach cancer. We had two children. One died at 23 in a police operation. He was in the wrong place with the wrong crowd, the wrong people. The other disappeared into the world, leaving the boys with me. Since then, I've been a mother and grandmother at the same time. And you never thought about stopping work? She gave a short, humorless laugh. Stop what, doctor? Social Security doesn't even pay for gas. And they, my grandchildren, need school, food, clothes. And I need to keep moving. If I stop, I fall apart. My body hurts, but I keep going. Gabriel felt his stomach tighten. The strength with which that woman spoke did not come from anger or sadness. It came from resilience. Rosa was not weak. She was the opposite. She was made of iron. And you never asked for help? Help? We learn not to depend on others because when we do, the fall is greater. I just want to be able to work in peace, to be healthy and above to keep going. I can handle the rest. He remained silent, feeling the weight of it all, the realization that hit him with every sentence. Rosa didn't need pity. She needed space, respect, visibility. Thank you for telling me. Really? She nodded with a restrained smile. I don't know why all this is affecting you so much, doctor. I'm still the same, only now I've been noticed. Gabriel looked around. That quiet, sophisticated house seemed smaller. Rosa, on the other hand, grew before him. You're not the same. Neither am I. I hope it's a good thing. I hope so too. She stood up, smoothing her apron. Can I go back to work? Yes, but if you ever want to stop and just talk, please call me. She left, leaving behind a faint scent of lavender and something else more difficult to name. Dignity. Gabriel sat there staring at his hands, thinking about everything he had heard, and finally understanding the magnitude of the change that had already begun within him and that he would have no way of stopping. The next morning, Gabriel woke up before his alarm clock. The sky was clear, but inside him the weather was different. Dense, silent, almost painful. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he stared at his feet, as if waiting for an answer that would not come. Something in his routine had cracked. And it wasn't something external, it was him. He slowly descended the stairs as if crossing a border. When he reached the living room, he saw Rosa arranging the sofa cushions with her usual precision. She looked up and nodded her head in silent greeting. He responded with a slight nod and headed for the kitchen. The breakfast table was impeccable, but as in recent days, he didn't touch the food, just sat there, observing the details, the shine of the cutlery, the soft smell of bread, the distant sound of traffic, and above all, the absence of any sign of life beyond the basics. When Rosa came in to pick up a cup she had left the night before, he called her. Rosa, you know how to cook Minas Gerais food, right? She smiled with her eyes. Yes, I do. Well, I was raised on a wood stove. Pressure cookers and green smells are my weapons of war. Do you miss real cooking? I do, but the boss's kitchen is no place for strong seasoning. Everything is measured, almost without salt. Gabriel laughed for the first time in days. Then make it for me one of these days. A lunch that tastes like home. She looked at him in surprise, then felt speechless. Later at the office, Gabriel could hardly concentrate. His eyes wandered across the screens, but his mind was far away. During his lunch break, he opened an old folder of photos stored in one of the cabinets. Among yellowed papers and forgotten memories, he found a picture. He was about 8 years old, sitting on his mother's lap on the porch of the old family home in Campinas. She smiled with her hair tied up in a makeshift bun, wearing a flowery apron and holding a plate of cheese bread. The memory came like a whim. The smell of cornmeal cake coming out of the oven, the pot of beans bubbling on the stove, his mother's hands always warm, always steady. He remembered the day she fainted for the first time. Exhausted from working so hard, taking care of the house and helping her husband in the small computer company that would one day become the empire he inherited. Gabriel realized that he hadn't thought about her so clearly in years. His mother had died young at the age of 45 from a massive stroke, and he, at only 18, locked himself away at work as if that would heal the pain. He never returned to that porch. He never tasted cheese bread again without thinking about productivity. He returned home that day with a new weight on his chest. Rosa had already left, as she always did on Monday afternoons, to go to church. He entered the living room, took off his shoes, and sat on the floor, leaning against the sofa. He looked at every corner of that space, the expensive furniture, the clean walls, the sound of the air conditioning, and wondered how many times his mother had felt like Rosa, how many times she had gone hungry, tired, lonely, and no one had noticed. He felt as if the mirror he looked into every day had cracked, that now each reflection showed something different. A man who grew up believing that success meant not depending on anyone, but who had actually built everything while ignoring what sustained his own foundations. Women like his mother, women like Rosa. It was on that day that he understood that something inside him had changed and that there was no turning back. On Thursday, Gabriel arrived earlier than usual. The sun was beginning to set over the city, tinging the sky with orange hues. He felt lighter, as if the previous days had filed away layers of hardness he didn't even know he carried. Upon entering the kitchen, he found Rosa washing vegetables. "Rosa, today I'm the one who's going to cook." She turned around immediately, frowning. "You're going to cook? Don't laugh. I know how to make a thing or two." "Sorry, ma'am. It's just that I've never seen you even pick up a pan. Today you will." She watched with curiosity as he opened the refrigerator. He separated the ingredients and began to stir them with an almost comical slowness. "I thought I'd make some garlic and oil pasta. Simple. My mother used to make it when we were short on time, or money, or patience, but it was always good." Rosa leaned against the sink, crossing her arms, watching this serious man, accustomed to signing million-dollar contracts, crushing garlic cloves with the side of his knife. It was a strange, intimate, almost familiar gesture. "Would you like some help?" "No, just company." She nodded with a slight smile. As the water boiled and the smell of garlic began to fill the room, Gabriel said, "You know, when I was little, my mother always cooked in a hurry, but with a smile, and yet I hardly remember the taste of the food. I remember the smell, the warmth, her presence. Presence nourishes, doctor, sometimes more than food." He nodded silently, served 2 plates, and pulled one of the chairs from the small side table. Rosa hesitated. "You can sit here, please, doctor. Today is different. Sit as my guest, not as an employee." She took a deep breath and sat down, feeling a little awkward at first. She adjusted the napkin on her lap and looked at her plate. "It smells good, see? We'll see if it tastes good too." They ate slowly. The pasta was just right. The garlic toasted to perfection. The salt balanced. But more than that, there was a flavor that didn't come from the ingredients. It came from the meeting of human eyes that finally happened between the two. "It's very good, doctor. Really. You can call me Gabrielle." "At least during dinner," she chuckled softly. "It's hard to break the habit. We start by trying." After a sip of juice, Rosa told him about one of her grandsons, Lucas, who had won an essay contest at school. Gabriel listened as if he were discovering a new world. He asked for details, wanted to know more. "He's very smart, likes math, but writes with emotion, which is rare." "Is he thinking about going to college?" "He is, but you know how it is, money, time, distance. Those things matter." Gabriel was thoughtful but didn't comment, just stored the information. When they finished, he got up to wash the dishes. Rosa tried to stop him. "Leave it to me, doctor. It's already too much that you cooked. I'll only accept that if you repeat this dinner with me next week." "Next week? Oh, yes. We'll take turns. 1 week I'll cook, the next you will, but on one condition." "What?" "Real seasoning. None of those soulless gourmet dishes." She smiled, and in that smile there was something he hadn't seen before. Comfort Rosa, for the first time, seemed to be there not as someone providing a service, but as someone who belonged there. That night, when Gabriel went up to his room, he didn't feel the usual emptiness. The house felt warm, live with the smell of garlic, yes, but also with the smell of memories, of people, which he knew was priceless. The next morning, Gabriel arrived at work with a different look in his eyes. The glass walls, the digital panels, the smell of gourmet coffee. Everything seemed to function as usual, but inside him, nothing was in its place anymore. He greeted the receptionist with a sincere good morning, something she hadn't received in a long time in the elevator. He noticed an intern with a torn backpack and a wrinkled shirt. Before, he would have ignored it, but this time it stuck in his mind. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. He entered the already crowded room and sat at the head of the table. His two main partners were present, Mauro, the CFO, and Sylvia, the COO, both with serious expressions, their eyes fixed on their laptop screens. "Good morning, everyone. Let's get straight to the point," said Mauro, opening the agenda. "Regarding the event in Salvador, we'll need to review the accommodation costs. Gabriel, you mentioned that you wanted to cut the premium packages?" "Yes," he replied. "I think it's unnecessary to rent suites in luxury hotels when we still pay below average base salaries in some departments." There was a silence. Sylvia raised an eyebrow. "That's new coming from you. A lot has changed," Gabriel replied without hesitation. Mauro adjusted his glasses. "With all due respect, Gabriel, these image adjustments may seem generous, but they are not efficient. We need to maintain the standard that attracts our partners. Luxury sells, but do you know what sells more?" Gabriel replied calmly. "Committed people, respected employees, a solid culture. We pretend to value people, but the company's base doesn't see that on a daily basis, and that's unsustainable." Sylvia crossed her arms. "What are you proposing? Cutting executive bonuses to increase administrative meal vouchers?" "If necessary, yes." The tension grew. Mauro laughed, trying to lighten the mood. "That's the effect of a spiritual retreat. He found Buddha over the weekend." Gabriel didn't laugh, he just stared at the two of them. "I found reality, which was always there, but I didn't see it. And now that I see it, I can no longer pretend it doesn't matter." The conversation veered off course, but the mood had already changed. As they left the meeting, Sylvia pulled him aside. "What's going on with you?" "I started listening." "Listening to whom?" "People you and I pretend don't exist. Rank-and-file employees, service providers, people who keep this company going while we worry about the next round of investment." She looked at him with surprise and skepticism. "Just be careful, Gabriel. The company has shareholders. You can't turn it into an NGO. I don't want an NGO. I want a company with soul." Sylvia walked away, visibly upset. He knew he was shaking things up. And when structures shake, they make noise. At the end of the workday, Gabriel passed by the kitchen and saw the cleaning lady standing alone, drinking coffee. He stopped at the door. "How are you, Mrs. Teresa?" She widened her eyes. "Do you know me?" "Of course I do. The building shines because of you." She smiled, not knowing how to respond. He approached her. "Do you need anything?" "Just hot coffee, sir, and good health to keep cleaning." He looked at her as he had looked at Rosa days before and understood that he was just beginning to see. That day, when he left the company, he didn't take his car. He walked through the streets of Itaim aimlessly, watching people, listening to voices, and thinking that maybe this was just the beginning of a bigger battle, because changing himself was difficult, but changing the system from which he himself benefited would be much more so. The following week, Gabriel kept up his routine of listening, talking less, observing more. And it was on one of those mornings that he found Rosa sitting in the mansion's backyard with a blue notebook open on her lap. As he approached, he saw that it wasn't hers. It was Lucas's, her grandson's. "He left it here yesterday. He was studying while waiting for me," she said, noticing Gabriel's gaze on the notebook. He leafed through the pages carefully. There were simple drawings, well-solved math problems, well-written sentences. In one corner, in crooked letters, was a note. "I dream of being an engineer. Rosa, this notebook is worth its weight in gold." She smiled awkwardly. "It's the only one he has. The school gave it to him at the beginning of the year, and he likes to study. He likes it a lot, but some days he comes home tired, stays up late taking care of his younger brother, and even then he doesn't put his books down." Gabriel was silent, feeling a mixture of admiration and discomfort. That boy had everything it took to shine, but he was stuck in a reality that so often stifles talents like his. Has he thought about taking a prep course for college entrance exams? Yes, but he thinks it's a distant dream. He says he doesn't want to be a financial burden. He says that if he doesn't pass, he'll try to find a job to help out at home. Gabriel slowly closed his notebook. "Rosa, would you let me help?" She frowned. "Help in the form of a quality prep course close to home. Maybe even a full scholarship to a technical college if he wants. I can take care of it without obligation. Just because he deserves it, Dr. Gabriel, she corrected herself with effort. What you want to do is beautiful, but I don't like to depend on others, and I don't want him to grow up thinking he needs help to be someone. He doesn't need help to be someone, but he may need an opportunity to show who he already is. Rosa looked at him and, for the first time, hesitated with tears in her eyes. I'm just afraid he'll dream too big and fall. Falling is part of it, but he won't be alone. Neither will you. She took a deep breath. If it's really to help him, and not out of pity, then it's okay. Gabriel extended his hand, sealing that silent agreement. That same afternoon, he made some calls. He found a reputable prep course in Santo Amaro, with evening classes and educational support. He also scheduled a visit to an NGO that offered scholarships to vulnerable young people. The next day, he called Lucas to talk. He was a boy with a steady gaze, thin, with slightly hunched shoulders, like someone who carries responsibilities before his time. So you want to be an engineer? Lucas looked at his grandmother, then at Gabriel. I do. I like to build things. I like to think about how things work. What if I told you I could help you get there? The boy was silent, then asked with disconcerting sincerity, Why? Gabriel smiled. Because I believe in you. That was all. Lucas said nothing, but his eyes shone in a way Gabriel Guerrero would never forget. That night, Rosa prepared chicken and rice and insisted on serving it at the kitchen table, with folded napkins and a glass of cashew juice for each of them. Tonight is a celebration dinner, she said, trying to hide her emotion. A celebration of what? Of hope. It's been a long time since we've had one of those here at home. And in that small kitchen, lit only by the yellow ceiling lamp and the shy glow of Lucas's eyes, Gabriel understood that he was doing more than just helping someone. He was slowly rewriting his own story. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Gabriel received an unusual call. His secretary answered first, but passed the message directly to him with an intrigued smile on her face. It's a young man named Andre. He says he's a journalist for a community newspaper in Capon Redondo. He wants to talk to you about Mrs. Rosa. Gabriel picked up the phone, curious. Hello. Mr. Gabriel Rangel, this is Andres Santos from Jornal de Rua de Baixo. It's a local newspaper here in the South Zone. I heard through Lucas's school that you have been helping Dona Rosa's family. I was wondering if you would be willing to talk a little about it. What do you mean? That wasn't publicized anywhere. Not officially, but it's a small community, sir. And what did you do? People are saying it's rare, that it changed her life, that we like to tell stories like that. Gabriel hesitated. I didn't do it to show off. I did it because it was the right thing to do. And that's exactly why we want to tell the story, because many people need to know that it's possible to do the right thing. After thinking for a few seconds, Gabriel agreed, asking for a simple interview without exaggeration, and that Rosa also be interviewed if she agreed. A few days later, the short article was published. Millionaire from Jardim Europa helps Maid and grandson change their lives. The power of the human gaze. The title was eye-catching, but the text was sensitive, direct, and focused on Rosa's story, with excerpts from Lucas's notebook, photos of the alley where they lived, and her words about dignity, not charity. At first, Gabriel thought it would go unnoticed, but it didn't. In less than 48 hours, the article was shared on social media, replicated by local blogs, and then cited by a larger news site. Comments quickly began to appear. Most were admiring and moved. Surprise, if all bosses were like this, that's what Brazil needs. Looking at others can be revolutionary. But, like everything on the internet, criticism also came. A marketing ploy. He wants to clean up his image with forced kindness. Selective philanthropy solves nothing. Gabriel read everything in silence. He knew that part of that repercussion would be beyond his control, and although he didn't like the exposure, he decided not to delete anything or issue any statements. One morning when he arrived at the company, he was approached at the front desk by a cleaning employee. Mr. Gabriel, can I say something? Of course. I read the article about you, about Mrs. Rosa. I cried because I'm also a grandmother. I also take care of my grandchildren. And no one has ever asked me my name here. I just wanted to say thank you for remembering us. Gabriel held her gaze for a moment. And what is your name? Layla. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Layla. She smiled with tears in her eyes. And that was enough for him to be sure he was on the right path, even if it was the most difficult one. At home, Rosa was restless. She didn't like the idea of being the subject of discussion on the internet. She was afraid of looks that didn't understand her struggle. I just wanted to keep working in peace, doctor, without becoming a symbol of anything. You didn't become a symbol, you became an inspiration. And that's different. Inspiration is tiring, but it also changes lives. You changed mine. She sighed deeply, sitting down on the chair on the porch. I just want Lucas to study. That's all. He will study, and Brazil will know it. Even if we don't want it to, sometimes the truth finds its way. And at that moment, without applause, without cameras, without headlines, Rosa just nodded like someone who carries the weight of being an example without having asked for it. The buzz around Gabriel and Rosa's story grew quietly, but it did not go unnoticed within the company. In the hallways, employees whispered about it, some admiring, others suspicious, but among the partners, tension began to boil. That Friday morning, Gabriel was called to an extraordinary meeting with Mauro and Sylvia without prior notice. When he entered the room, he noticed the tension in the air. Mauro was holding a folder in his hands. Sylvia was typing something on her laptop, but stopped as soon as he sat down. Is there a problem? Gabriel asked. Mauro cleared his throat. Let's get straight to the point. We received an opinion from the legal department. There is a clause in the governance agreement that allows for a vote of confidence. If the partners consider that the president is acting in a manner that is harmful to the company's image and institutional stability. Gabriel stared at him silently for a few seconds. And you think that's what I'm doing? Sylvia crossed her arms. You're making isolated decisions, exposing the company in unauthorized media, and diverting focus from the business. This story with Rosa looks good on the internet, but there are people on the board who think this is personal marketing at the expense of the brand. Marketing? Do you think helping an invisible employee have dignity is an image strategy? It's not about ethics, Gabriel. It's about financial and reputational impact. The market is cruel. Investors are asking if you're stable, if you're not too emotional. So why did I stop pretending that profit is everything? Now I'm a risk, Mauro replied bluntly. Gabriel stood up slowly. Then let's take the vote now. I want to see who has the courage to sign this coup with their own hands. No need for drama. We just want to keep the company on track. The problem is that you think staying on track means keeping everything as it always has been. And I can no longer pretend that this is right. Sylvia looked at Mauro uncomfortably. There was something in her gaze that Gabriel didn't recognize. Doubt. The vote will be next week, Mauro said. Full board. Let's see who's still with you. Gabriel left the room with his heart racing. The coup was no surprise, but the coldness with which it was articulated hurt more than he expected. He walked to his office and locked the door. For the first time in a long time, he felt fear. Real fear. That night at home, he couldn't hide his dejected expression. Rosa noticed right away. You seem different today. I had a bad day. Did something happen? They're trying to remove me from the presidency. She sat down slowly because of Lucas's story, because of everything, because she didn't close her eyes, because she wanted to change what bothered her, because she remembered that people come before spreadsheets. Rosa was silent for a moment. You're not wrong, sir, but people who bother others always scare those who are afraid of losing power. The problem is that they have more power, but you have people, and real people are priceless. On Sunday, without Gabriel knowing, Rosa organized a community breakfast in Capão Redondo. She invited neighbors, friends, former employees, people who had heard his story, were moved, and decided to help in some way. Among those present were teachers, employees from Gabriel's own company, interns, and even a former HR director he no longer remembered. They brought posters, testimonials, and thank you letters. The next day, Gabriel arrived at the company and found his door covered with sticky notes. One of them, handwritten, said, "If they try to silence your voice, we will speak for you." And that's when he realized the seed had already been planted. Even if they took him away, the change could no longer be erased. On Tuesday, the board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. The atmosphere at the company's headquarters was tense, almost ceremonial. Employees avoided speaking loudly. Some looked at Gabriel with sympathy, others with downcast eyes, as if watching an inevitable shipwreck. Gabriel spent the morning in silence. He didn't prepare a speech or organize his arguments. He knew it wasn't a judgment of numbers, but of values, and he didn't want to defend himself there. He wanted to take a stand. When he entered the room, he saw everyone gathered. Mauro in an impeccable suit with his usual briefcase. Sylvia, more serious than usual. The other board members, business people, investors, and analysts seated around the solid wood table. Gabriel, Mauro began, as agreed, this is a deliberative meeting. We will be discussing your continued tenure as president of the company. Before the vote, you have the right to speak. Gabriel stood up. For a moment, the silence seemed overwhelming, but he took a deep breath and began. I know what you're thinking, that I've gone crazy, that I've stopped being rational, that I'm mixing the company with my personal life. And maybe that's true. Maybe I am mixing them. But the question I ask myself is, how do you separate the human from what we do every day? He looked around. No one interrupted him. This company grew based on innovation, technology, efficiency, but we forgot to look at who was cleaning the rooms, serving coffee, taking care of the base, and I was the first to ignore it. Until I couldn't anymore. Sylvia lowered her eyes. Rosa's story is no exception. It's the rule. There are people shining in our structure while struggling to pay for their children's milk, and we pretend not to see. But I saw, and when we see, we either change or get sick. She paused. My chest felt heavy. I don't want to be removed from the presidency for wanting more justice. But if I am, I'll leave knowing that I did what I had to do, because success without conscience is just ego. And I'm no longer proud of numbers that hide people. Total silence. Mauro cleared his throat. Thank you. Let's vote. One by one, the votes were recorded. 2 against Gabriel, 3 in favor, 2 abstain. The result? Gabriel remained president, but with limitations. He would lose some of his autonomy in strategic decisions and would need collegial approval for any social impact project linked to the company. He received the news calmly. He didn't smile. He didn't protest. He just nodded. As he left the room, he met Sylvia in the hallway. You won, but the company will change, and not everyone will like it. I don't want to please. I want to transform. That may isolate you, perhaps, but I'd rather be alone and at peace than surrounded and empty. Sylvia touched his shoulder briefly. I voted in favor. I just wanted you to know. Gabriel thanked her with a glance. There was something different about her, perhaps a crack. That night, when he told Rosa what had happened, she smiled. You haven't lost anything, sir. They just clipped your wings a little, but you're still flying. And flying lighter, she served chamomile tea. Now that you've said what you think, you'll have to show that you really believe it. And I'll take it one step at a time. One step at a time changes the world, she replied. While they drank their tea, Lucas did his homework at the kitchen table, silently, concentrating. Gabriel watched him for a moment and thought, perhaps this boy represents the Brazil that the company needs to understand, and that he was now unwilling to ignore ever again. In the following months, Gabriel's company began to transform, not with fanfare, but with depth. The actions did not come from motivational speeches, but from practical decisions that were put into practice. And even with the board's vigilance, the changes moved forward. The first initiative was the launch of the Raise program, aimed at outsourced employees and immediate family members of low-income employees. The proposal was simple: to offer access to scholarships, assistance for technical training, and free psychological counseling. Rosa was the first to be called to join the program's community coordination team. Gabriel made the invitation carefully, knowing that she might resist. Me? Coordinate? But I'm just a maid, sir. No, you are a bridge between two worlds that never see each other. No one better to be there. She hesitated, fidgeting with her hands. And who will do the housework? You have served long enough. Now it's time to teach. Rosa accepted with fear, but with determination, and gradually gained her space. She began by listening to stories, then organizing meetings, until she became an internal reference, not only as the woman who inspired change, but as someone capable of leading transformation. Lucas, in turn, passed the selection process for the technical college with a full scholarship. He was now a prominent student, known by teachers and praised by the administration. Gabriel followed everything closely, but from a distance without intruding. Gabriel's mansion also changed, not in its architecture, but in its atmosphere. The cold silence gave way to voices, laughter, the sound of pots and pans, and long conversations. He himself took some pictures off the walls and replaced them with Lucas's drawings, old photos of his mother, and posters from the RASU program to welcome visits from NGOs, public schools, and small entrepreneurs from the suburbs. Gabriel created a social microcredit fund within the innovation sector. Young people with good ideas began to receive support, mentoring, and space. Not all partners supported it, but as he said, the boat is on the river, and the current has already changed. One day, Sylvia walked into his office. The press wants to do a big story on the program, with photos, video, the whole institutional thing. Gabriel looked at her calmly. Does Rosa want that? I don't know. We can ask. If she wants it, we'll do it. If not, we'll let her continue at her own pace. Sylvia smiled, almost surprised. You've really changed, haven't you? I just started listening. And when you really listen, there's no going back to being deaf. You know the board still thinks you're unstable. Better to be unstable than insensitive. She turned around, but before leaving, she murmured, "Thank you for not giving up." That same day, Gabriel went to visit one of the program's partner units at a school in the East Side. He arrived without a tie, his shirt tucked in, backpack on his back. At the door, a boy ran up to him. "Hi, Uncle. You're the guy who helped Lucas, right?" "Yes, I am. Do you know him?" "I do. He said he's going to be an engineer. I want to be like him." Gabriel bent down to the boy's height. "Then you will be. But in your own way, with your own name." The boy smiled and ran back to the court. Back at the mansion that night, Rosa was preparing Kanjika for dinner. Gabriel entered the kitchen, smelled the aroma, and closed his eyes for a moment. "This reminds me of my mother. She used to make sweets." She did, but more than that, she made the house smell good. "A real smell, Rosario. Now it smells like people, doctor." "This has become a home." He nodded and at that moment understood. What began as guilt became a path, and the path became a purpose. It was a Sunday morning when Gabriel decided to do something he had been putting off for months. He called Rosa out to the balcony while they were having coffee together and said casually, "I'm going to sell the mansion." Her eyes widened, the coffee pot in her hand. "Sell it?" "Yes, I've thought about it a lot. This place has already fulfilled its role in my life. Now I want something simpler, more authentic." "And where are you going, doctor?" "An apartment near Ibirapuera, 2 bedrooms, a balcony, a small kitchen, but with space to entertain friends. And with the smell of coffee, just the way you like it." She smiled with tears in her eyes. "It will be strange not to see you crossing this room every day. You won't stop seeing me, you'll just see me more often." He explained that part of the sale price would be donated to a permanent fund for the RAISE program, ensuring the continuity of the projects. Another part would be used to create a small publishing house that would publish stories of real lives, starting with Rosa's. "A book?" she said, surprised. "People need to hear your story. I need more Gabriels to see their Rosas. But I don't even know how to speak beautifully." "You just need to speak the truth. That's already poetry." Rosa didn't answer. She just smiled and went back to the kitchen, wiping her eyes with her apron. The apartment was ready 2 months later. Gabriel moved in with a few pieces of furniture, a few paintings, and many books. The space was small but lively, and curiously, it had never been so full of people. Employees, former colleagues, new neighbors. Rosa always showed up. Sometimes she brought cake, sometimes just to talk. Lucas, now wearing a new uniform, started visiting him on Saturdays. He brought exercises, engineering projects, and lots of questions. Gabriel answered them all patiently and sometimes even made mistakes on purpose, just to see him correct them with pride. One of those afternoons, sitting on the porch, Lucas asked, "Uncle Gabriel, what is success?" Gabriel thought for a few seconds. "Success is when you look at your own path and feel peace, even if it hasn't been easy, even if the road has been full of potholes." "And do you feel that?" "Now I do." That same week he was invited to give a lecture at a university. The topic was social responsibility in the corporate market. He took the stage without slides, without a suit, without a script. He took only one photo of his kitchen at home with Rosa serving coffee and Lucas studying in the background. This, he said, pointing to the image, it was the greatest MBA of my life. The audience was moved, but what mattered most to him was not the applause, but the respectful silence that followed. Back at the apartment, he found Rosa sitting at the table with the kanjika on the stove. You look it great on TV, you know. They said it was the lecture of the year. The credit goes to you. I just repeated it out loud. She laughed. You repeated it well. Gabriel sat down, crossed his arms, and looked around. You know, Rosa, for a long time I thought home was a place, but today I understand that home is people. Home is where we can be who we are without fear and close to those who matter. Silence. The kanjika bubbled on the stove. The sweet smell filled the room. Lucas appeared at the door with a book in his hands. Can I read a passage to you? Sure, they said almost at the same time. He sat down and began to read. His young, steady voice filled the room, and there, between words, glances, and memories, Gabriel understood that his life had found something that money could never give him: meaning. If this story touched you, if it made you think or feel something real, subscribe to the channel now. There are many other stories waiting for you here, so don't leave yet. Click on the video that is appearing on the screen now and continue with us on this journey. A better story may be just a click away. M.